1 Corinthians chapter 13. And this is the continuation of the letter that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. And through this letter, he's talked about how he's heard good things about the church and bad things about the church. He talks about offices and ordinances in the church. He talks about gifts in the church. And he gets here toward the end here of chapter 13. He talks about how he matured in the faith and in the spirit. But even in that, here, while we're here, we only see partly. We don't know everything. And chapter 13, verse 13, he says, "And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity." And faith, hope, and charity, that's the only time that they're together in the Bible. These three is 18 times in the Old Testament, 6 times in the New Testament. Greatest of these is only in the Bible once, but charity is in the Bible 28 times, and it's all in the New Testament. So he's comparing here, he talks about these things. And even as great as faith and hope is, he's still talking about how that love is the greatest of these. And I think the biggest change a lot of times I see in a person when they get saved is they go from a selfish nature to a selfless nature. And love shows up. And you think about the people who are closest to you, the people who are easiest to love. And the greatest love is there with the people that we're close to. Well, in our faith, we need to be close to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that love needs to show there too. I mean, our faith, if we're Christians, we've got faith. And Tim talked about how hope is a continuation of faith. And it is. And then he lists charity last. And he talks about how this is the greatest thing. People can come to you and give you a lot of things. But you think about when a person comes to you and brings love to you, of what a wonderful thing that is. And you think about the people that we love and the people who love us. If we're separated for a while and then we get back together, of that happiness and joy, and part of that is we know we're around people who love us. And I've talked about it before, that there are people in this world who are absolutely alone. They don't have family. They don't have friends. They don't know the Lord. Absolutely alone. I've never been in that place. I never want to be in that place. Because I'm around enough people, especially these last 3 weeks, of people showing me love. Chapter 14 starts, 1 Corinthians 14:1. It says, "Follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that you may prophesy." Follow after charity. Follow love. Desire spiritual gifts. I think the Lord has something for all of us to do. And some of that has to be, spiritual. Not everybody's going to preach or teach or sing or testify or pray, witness. But somewhere in there, we all should be somewhere in there. We all have a call. And we need to desire the spiritual gift, whatever the Lord wants us to do. And some people, the Lord gives a whole lot of different gifts. Mm-hmm. And some people, He may just give one gift to. And if all we're given is one gift, that's fine. Let's take it and do the best we can with it. Mm-hmm. And if we're given multiple gifts, be thankful for that blessing and work on all of them. And it may change. When I was first saved, I really believed my spiritual gift was to show up. I was faithful attendance to the church. And then it went to testifying. And now I'm doing Sunday school.
Praise the Lord.
And things can change. You know. So we need to desire that. But here he says, but rather that you may prophesy. Now, follow after charity is only in the Bible once, and that you may prophesy is only in the Bible once. And there's two different meanings to prophesy. Usually when we think about prophecy, we think about a prediction of future events. That's usually when we think about prophecy. But prophecy is also, I learned this, prophecy is also teaching the Word, reading the Word, preaching, and things like that. That's part of prophecy too. In verse 2 he says, for he that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God. For no man understandeth him, howbeit in the Spirit he speaketh mysteries. Now, unknown tongue is in the Bible 6 times in the New chapter, 6 times in the New Testament, all in this chapter. Not unto men 3 times in the New Testament, but unto God 2 times in the New Testament. No man understandeth once in the Bible, and speaketh mysteries is once in the Bible. He's saying here that he that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God. Now, there's a preacher that I like that talked about, and he teaches that the Pentecostal speaking in tongues is actually not for church. It's for prayer. And this is a verse here. It says that it speaketh not unto men, but unto God, for no man understandeth him. Howbeit, in the Spirit he speaketh mysteries. So, it's there's 2 verses in the Bible that I believe relates to Pentecostal speaking in tongues, and this is one of them, because it simply says, for no man understandeth him. And it's not that, he doesn't say no man there, like he's talking to the church. He says no man. Verse 3 says, but he that prophesieth speaketh unto men to edification and exhortation and comfort. And prophesy 3 times in the Old Testament, 4 times in the New Testament. Edification is 4 times in the New Testament. Exhortation is 10 times in the New Testament. And the word prophecy, the definition of prophecy is a message from God. So he's saying here, he that prophesieth speaketh unto men to edification. The teaching and the preaching of God's holy word here, one thing it has to be for us is edification. And edification is building up. That's what edify means, to build up. And then it talks about exhortation. And exhortation is basically a kind of cheering on. So when we need to use his word here to, when people or Christians are down, they need a hand up. I don't know how many people's giving me a hand up. And exhortation, you take and you cheer people on, you encourage them, you're doing good. Keep doing good. You know, I'd love to hear you sing. I'd love to hear you preach, teach. I'd love to hear your prayer time. I love you testify. I love you just showing up and saying hello. Exhortation. There's 2 different churches I went to. The first person that met me was an older woman. Made me feel welcome. To this day, I remember that. Both churches. That's what they did. They greeted people. They let people know they were happy to see them in church. Please come back. They were exhorting and everything. And sometimes we need edification too, though. sometimes we get weary and tired. And wonder, you know, Lord, am I doing any good? Lord, I've been trying and trying and trying, and today looks like 4 weeks ago or whatever, it looks like the same day here. Is anything helping? And then somebody come along and show us a word out of the Bible. Build us back up. Well, we'll hear a song. Tim and I talked about pulling over the side of the road, getting out running around songs. You know, music is such a powerful thing. It's incredibly powerful. And, you know, we listen to music that builds us back up or exhorts us or makes us know, you know, our faith is real, Jesus is real. We got a place we're going to for eternity. Joy, peace, love, forever. No sorrow, no sickness, nothing like that. That should build us up and exhort us. Just that right there. Just that part of God's word, the promise of heaven. Verse 4 says, he that speaketh in an unknown tongue edifieth himself, but he that prophesieth edifieth the church. This goes back to, is the unknown tongue just between a person and God? Because it says it edifieth himself. It builds himself up. But he that prophesieth edifieth the church. And it's amazing how I've read through the Bible several times, and I'm trying to read through it again, and of course studying for Sunday school and making notes when people preach and everything. And so there's a lot there for me in his word. And the church edifying us, but it's through his word that's edifying us. There's a story about how there were some people, I don't know who they were, so I can't say it, but it was an organization that was doing missionary work, and they went to Russia. And I've told the story before, and it just amazes me. They were handing out Bibles. And there was a woman got there, and they handed her a Bible. And she just held it to herself and kneeled down on the street and was crying. And then she tried to give the Bible back. And they were like, no, it's yours. And she said, but it's God's word. And they told her, yes, it is. But this copy is yours. And when they walked away, she was still kneeling in the street crying. How many Bibles have we got access to? Are we thankful for them? Do we appreciate them?
Help us, Lord.
Verse 6 says, now, brethren, if I come unto you speaking with tongues, what shall I profit you, except I shall speak to you either by revelation, or by knowledge, or by prophesying, or by doctrine, and that's question marks. And I apologize. I skipped 2 verses. I am so sorry. Verse 5 says, I would that y'all spake with tongues, but rather that you prophesied, for greater is he that prophesieth than he that speaketh with tongues, except he interpret, that the church may receive edifying. So, y'all spake is in the Bible once, except you interpret once, and receive edifying once. So this goes back to the speaking in tongues. He'd like everybody to do it, because Paul he made the quote, he spoke in tongues more than anybody. And he'd like for all of them to do it, but more importantly here, I would rather you prophesy. And that goes back to prophecy to me about the word, the teaching of the word, the reading of the word. He's like, tongues are good, but this here is more important, because it says, for greater is he that prophesies. Because it goes back to the prophecy is for the whole church. We're going to build this church up as a body. We need prophecy here. And this is more important. I believe that's what he's saying. Now, verse 6. Now, brethren, if I come to you speaking with tongues, what shall I profit you? Except I shall speak to you either by revelation, or by knowledge, or by prophesying, or by doctrine. Now, come on to you one time in the Old Testament, 17 times in the New Testament. Profit you 2 times in the New Testament. Revelation is 12 times in the New Testament. And revelation means to unveil or uncover something that was hidden. And one definition of prophecy, I talked about this, is to explain Scripture. By revelation, 3 times in the New Testament. By knowledge, 1 time in the Old Testament, 2 times in the New Testament. By prophesying, 1 time in the New Testament. And by doctrine, 1 time in the New Testament. So he's saying here that he'd like for everybody to speak in tongues, but what's that going to profit you? But if I speak to you by revelation, or by knowledge, or by prophesying, or by doctrine, he's saying these things are more important here. Going back to tongues, maybe an individual's life. All this other here talks about the church. You know, if somebody walked up to us and just asked us a question and walked off, if somebody gave us a puzzle and there was no solution to it, what good would it do us? Sometimes we need things explained to us. And the revelation is mystery. I heard a preacher do a really good program one time about 7 mysteries in the Bible. And one of them was Jesus being manifest. But he brings up knowledge here, and prophesying, and relation, and doctrine. And doctrine's important. The church has to have rules. The doctrine has to come from his holy word. But there has to be things in the church that we know are right. And also what the church stands for. That's usually the doctrine of the church. People put up signs and things. A lot of times when you first come in, they put up posters or wherever. We believe that this church is here. This is what the church believes. And that goes to doctrine. And it's important to know this. Verse 7 says, and he's going to get back into verse 7 says, even things without life giving sound, whether pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sound, how shall it be known what is piped or harp? Now, the giving sound is in the Bible once. Pipe or harp is in the Bible once. Distinction is in the Bible once. In the sound, in the Bible once. Piped or harp is in the Bible once. Now what it's saying here is even things without life will give a sound. Pipe or harp. Have you ever heard somebody try to play an instrument and they absolutely do not know what they're doing? When I was a teenager down at the White Church, the original Full Gospel Church down there was a fellow that came, he was an evangelist, and he was passing through. And he had a fiddle. And he was up at the house, Mama was fixing something big or something. And I asked him, could I look at that thing? Yeah. So I got his fiddle and his bow, and I started dragging that bow across that thing, and I think, neighbors 3 doors down thought I was killing cats or something. This was the awfulest sound I've ever heard in my life. Okay? I knew right off the bat, and anybody listening to this knew I didn't know what I was doing. And Paul was referring to this, that you can have a pipe or a harp, and you'll get a sound out of it. But what's the distinction in the sound? Somebody who can play an instrument really well usually when you hear this instrument, you know what instrument it is. And he talks about here, it shall be known what is piped or harp, question mark. I talked about people who can't play instruments, and then there are people who can play instruments. I've seen some incredible guitar players in my time. Just watching them play and listening to them is just incredible. Some people just, that's what they're meant to be. That's their God-given talent. They're musicians. And they took that and worked on it and worked on it and worked and keep working on it, keep working on it. And it's an incredible thing. I've heard keyboard players, piano players, just magnificent. And of course I've heard whole orchestras and things like that. And it's a beautiful thing if a person can do it and knows what they're doing. In verse 8, it continues in this. It says, for if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself for the battle? Uncertain sound is in the Bible once. Prepare himself is only in the Bible once. Now to the battle is 11 times in the Old Testament and 2 times in the New Testament. It's a continuation of, you think about especially the infantry and army, the bugle sounds of what they're supposed to be doing. And a person has to know to really play this because battles are loud and confusion and things like that. But if they hear that sound, if they hear that trumpet, then they know what to do. And trumpets are important because in Revelation it talks about the last trumpet when Jesus comes. Verse 9. So likewise ye, except ye utter by the tongue words easy to understand, how shall it be known what is spoken? For ye shall speak into the air. Likewise ye, 7 times in the New Testament. It means in the same way. Ye utters 1 time in the Old Testament, 1 time in the New Testament. Words easy is in the Bible once. What is spoken is in the Bible once. Speak into the air once. And what that means is a vain or of no purpose. It means vain or no purpose. Now, I love words, I know a lot of words I don't know. There's some really long words I know. I've seen people, usually politicians, I've seen some preachers, they could give up and give you a 20-minute dissertation of something they could say in 2 minutes, using all these big long words, hoping you're listening and pay attention to them. You get to the end of it, and there'll be people in the congregation who'll be like, what? There was no effect. Sometimes it's really good to keep things simple. And Paul talks about this. Because the simpler you keep things, the more people will be able to understand it. And if you're not doing these things, you could be sitting there speaking into the air. And vain, that's where the word vanity comes from. Okay? Or no purpose. Have you ever had somebody talk to you and then walk off and you didn't know any more before they come up than when they walked off?
Mm-hmm.
What good was it? If my intent or a person's intent is to come up and impress somebody with my knowledge of vocabulary, then my purpose there is to impress you with my vocabulary. It's vanity. And it will serve no purpose. I worked with a man one time who I really liked. We got along great, worked great together and everything. And sat on his porch before, talking with his wife. The man couldn't hardly read. He knew enough to where they couldn't cheat him on his check and things like that. And he told me he'd never been farther than North Carolina or Virginia. He had no desire to travel. So a lot of things he'd have a hard time understanding. It served no purpose to him. Verse 10 says, there are, it may be, so many kinds of voices in the world, and none of them is without signification. Kinds of voices is only in the Bible once. Without signification is only in the Bible once. The signification means there are particular words in every language. Now that's one thing about me talking about liking words and everything is in different languages. They will tell you that there are words that don't exactly translate into another language. You know, it's like the old saying about, I can't remember how many it is, but the Eskimos have so many different words for the word snow because it's different kinds of snow. In the Bible, with the Greek here, there's different, the Greek had different words. Love, they had different words for different kinds of love. But the important thing here is there are, since we speak English, there are words that will mean more to us than it would be somebody who learned English as a second language. And whatever their language is, there's words that would mean more to them than us learning, trying to learn because it just wouldn't translate. Verse 11 says, therefore, if I know not the meaning of the voice, I shall be unto him that speaketh a barbarian, and he that speaketh shall be a barbarian unto me. Meaning of the voice is only in the Bible once. Speaketh for a barbarian is in the Bible once. Barbarian, 2 times in the New Testament. Barbarians, 2 times in the New Testament. And the definition of barbarian, it means a savage, uncivilized. Barbarian unto me is in the Bible once. So this goes back to Paul talking about how we speak and the words we use. And if we don't understand what's being said to us, and we don't understand, if they don't understand what we're saying, there's no conversation here. It's like 2 barbarians speaking together. You think about how if you took two tribes of anywhere that had never seen each other with different languages, and they show up and start speaking to each other, what good's going to do? They're not going to understand each other. So words and how we use them is important. And Paul keeps talking about this. And if we don't understand not the meaning of the voice, and it's interesting how, different languages, I love French. I don't know a lot of it. French is a beautiful language. And I think about that, but I also have often thought about how some of the languages, the German and Austrian and stuff, I hear them speaking. To me, they sound like they're mad at each other. And a lot of the Hispanic languages, to me, it sounds like they're using 20 words, which you could say in 5. It seems like there's a lot of more words in their speech. If we don't, and in those words though, it talks about the meaning of the voice. How we say things is important too, because then that becomes the meaning of the voice. I could sit here at the top of my lungs and scream, "I love you" at somebody. That's going to do a lot of good. So it's important. What we say, how we say it. Verse 12. Even so, ye, for as much as you are zealous of spiritual gifts, seek that you may excel to the edifying of the church. Now, zealous is in the Bible 2 times in the Old Testament, 6 times in the New Testament. And excel is 4 times in the Old Testament, 1 time in the New Testament. He's saying, even so, you, I know you're zealous of the spiritual gifts. Seek that you may excel to the edifying of the church. This goes back to the church as a body. This goes back to building up as a church. How are we going to use our spiritual gifts? I've been around people who, they were really good at something. And they know they're really good at something. And they want you to know they're really good at something. And expect you to tell them they're really good at something. That's building up themselves. But if we take our gifts and we build up the church, in the Bible where it talks about there's many members in the body, and all the members need to come together and work together. And if all the members work together, you've got a strong body. And if everybody in the church makes an effort to really find out what their gift is from the Lord, work on this gift, not for themselves, but to build up the church. We all come together. Like I said, there are people who can do certain things, and it really is strong to build up. You know, Joshua will build stuff. He will tell you, if you start off on a poor foundation, guess what? It's not going to happen. You're not going to have a strong building. You have to have that firm foundation. And if the church has the firm foundation of everybody using their gifts, not for themselves, but for the church, then the church is going to be strong. The foundation is going to be strong. And when hard times come, and then they will, not only to a person, but to a church, the church can withstand these things. Because they built that foundation. And everybody working together, you know, it's hard to beat a team. Me and Tim sees this so much in sports. We'll see teams that's got a few good players, incredibly good players on it. They usually don't win championships. But teams where there are teams and everybody's working together and everybody does what they're supposed to, they're hard to beat. And I think it honors God more when we have a strong church. So he's saying, as much as, you know, I'm glad you won't be zealous of these things. Be passionate about your gifts. That's good. But what we need you to do is to excel. You think about the word excellent. You think about a person excels at something. They work harder, they're better at it, and things like this. They're making this effort. Now, I've talked about it before. We all have mental and physical limitations. Nobody can do everything. But what we can do, if we do it the best we can, and everybody else does it the best we can, then the church is really, really going to be a strong church. And when we need this church to be strong to help us, it'll be there. Or if somebody else needs it, we would be able to help them and keep the church strong. Verse 13 says, wherefore let him that speaketh in an unknown tongue pray that he may interpret. Now, the unknown tongue prayer is only in the Bible once. Now this, I believe, is the reference back to language. When the disciples spoke in languages of people who were around them, languages they did not know. But somebody had to interpret these things. That goes back to not knowing what somebody is saying. So he's saying here, the person who does speak in this, pray that they may also interpret. Verse 14 says, for if I pray in an unknown tongue, my spirit prays, but my understanding is unfruitful. Unfruitful is in the Bible 6 times in the New Testament, and spirit prayer is in the Bible once. So he's saying here that if he prays in an unknown tongue, his spirit is praying. But his understanding is unfruitful. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about how that we could get to a place where we can't even utter a prayer, and the Holy Spirit prays for us. And I believe that's a reference. Verse 15 says, what is it then? I will pray with the Spirit, and I will pray with the understanding also. I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with the understanding also. And I read that yesterday when I was doing this. Pray with the Spirit is only in the Bible once. Pray with the understanding is only in the Bible once. Sing with the Spirit is only in the Bible once. And sing with the understanding is only in the Bible once. So those 4 different phrases are only in this one verse in the thousands and thousands. I think it's 31,000 and some verses in the King James Bible. All of this is contained in this one verse here. And it's like I will pray with the Spirit, and I will pray with the understanding. Or I will sing with the Spirit, and I will sing with the understanding also. So you've got praying with the Spirit, singing with the Spirit, praying with understanding, singing with understanding. Here. There's so much going on there. I will pray with the Spirit. Those few church services I've been in, I've heard people pray, I can rent the house. We had church. They were praying with the Spirit. And it stood out. And singing with the Spirit too. Oh my goodness, I've seen church break out during singing. The Spirit was there. And if we're close, and if we study and all these other things, then the understanding comes here. And it's a wonderful thing. And to me, y'all, that's a reason. Just another reason. There are so many of them. To be in church. I mean, if I'd made it till Tuesday, it's been 3 weeks since I've been in church. Oh, I've missed it. And I missed the church family. We need to be in his house to see these things. Praying with the Spirit and singing with the Spirit. I mean, you can get saved and go home and live the rest of your life there. And if you're truly saved, you go to heaven. But what blessings are you missing out on by not coming to his house?
Amen.
And I think it's important.
Amen, bro.
And actually, that would be a really good prayer. Tim talks about praying verses. That would be a really good prayer. It's like, Lord, help me. Help me to pray with the Spirit and understand. Lord, help me to sing with the Spirit and understand. And Lord, if that's not my calling, then whose ever calling it is, Lord, please bless me. Build up the church.
Amen, bro.
So, thank y'all for listening.